That Wi-Fi is mine!
Diane Callahan's finger jabbed the air between them, close enough that Marcus Whitfield could feel the heat of her anger from 3 feet away. He didn't move. He stood in his own doorway, suit jacket still buttoned from the morning's client call, arms folded, and said nothing for a moment longer than she expected. "Ma'am, I think you're mistaken," he said finally, his voice level. "I haven't touched your network. Don't you dare," she snapped, loud enough that the Henderson's sprinkler system across the street seemed to pause. "I've seen my Wi-Fi showing up on my phone right outside your house all week. You changed the name so I wouldn't recognize it. You think I'm stupid?" Marcus glanced down at his phone, more out of instinct than doubt, and that's when he saw it, a network broadcasting from somewhere close, its signal strength nearly matching his own. Its name close enough to his firm's that a person glancing quickly might mistake one for the other. He hadn't renamed anything. He hadn't touched a router that wasn't his. But something on that list didn't belong to him, either. Diane didn't wait for him to finish looking. She'd already pulled her phone to her ear, thumb jabbing at the screen with the same fury she'd aimed at him a second earlier. "Yes, I need police at..." She rattled off the address without breaking eye contact with him, like she wanted him to hear every word. "My neighbor's been stealing my internet, hacking into my account. I don't know what else he's done. I haven't done anything," Marcus said, and he meant to sound calm, but even he heard the edge creeping into it now. 6 months in this house. 6 months of polite nods that had never become conversations. He'd told himself it didn't matter. People didn't have to like you to leave you alone. Apparently, that wasn't true today. "Save it for the officers," Diane said, lowering the phone just enough to glare at him properly. "I know exactly what I saw." Marcus had answered every question she'd actually asked. The problem was that she hadn't asked many. By the time she'd walked across the lawn, she'd already decided what kind of man lived behind his front door. "You can wait for them if you want," Diane said, arms crossing now, phone still clutched tight in one fist. "But I already know what they're going to find." "I hope you're right," Marcus said quietly. "Because if you are, this ends in about 10 minutes. And if you're not..." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Diane's jaw tightened, and for just a second, so brief he almost missed it, something flickered across her face that wasn't anger at all. It looked for half a heartbeat like doubt. Her phone buzzed in her hand. "New device signed into your account." The kind of notification most people glance at and dismiss without reading. She frowned at it for half a second, then swiped it away, too locked into her fury at Marcus to notice that it was the third one that week, a login from a device she didn't recognize, in a city she'd never visited. She didn't mention it. She didn't think it mattered. Marcus, still watching the strange network, sitting quietly on his phone screen, wasn't so sure. In the distance, faint but growing, a siren cut through the quiet of the cul-de-sac. Diane straightened, satisfaction settling over her features, like she'd already won something. Marcus didn't move from his doorway. He simply looked down one more time at the unfamiliar signal blinking on his screen, steady, unusually strong, and broadcasting far beyond what a normal home router should have managed. Whatever was about to happen on this street, he realized, had already been happening for a while. Nobody standing in that driveway had any idea how far it reached, or how close to home it actually started. The patrol car eased to the curb, and Diane was already walking toward it before the engine cut off, arms crossed, chin lifted like she'd been rehearsing this moment since the call connected. "Officer, thank God," she said. "He's been stealing my Wi-Fi." He changed the name to hide it. Check his phone. The officer who stepped out first was younger, notepad already in hand. His partner, older, heavier in the shoulders, hung back a beat longer, taking in the scene, Marcus still in the doorway, jacket buttoned, hands visible. Something in how he stood made the older officer slow his approach. "Sir, mind stepping out here for a second?" the younger one asked. Marcus came down the 2 steps to the walkway. "Officer Reyes," he said, reading the name tag, voice even. "I haven't touched her network. I can show you my phone right now if that helps move this along." "He's had a week to get his story straight," Diane said. "Of course he'll show you his phone. Ask him about the one he set up to look like mine." Reyes glanced between them, then held a hand toward Marcus. "Can I see it?" Marcus came down the 2 steps to the walkway. Officer Reyes, he said, reading the name tag, voice even. I haven't touched her network. I can show you my phone right now if that helps move this along. He's had a week to get his story straight, Diane said. Of course he'll show you his phone. Ask him about the one he set up to look like mine. Reyes glanced between them, then held a hand toward Marcus. Can I see it? Marcus unlocked the screen without hesitation and passed it over. No flinch, no delay, the kind of readiness that comes from having nothing to hide, though Reyes clearly hadn't decided that yet. The older officer, whose tag read Dabrowski, leaned in over his partner's shoulder. On screen, the list of nearby networks sat in plain view. Marcus's own, familiar and steady. Diane's, 2 bars weaker. And a third, broadcasting stronger than either, its name close enough to Marcus's firm that a glance might blur the two together. That one, Marcus said, tapping it. That's not mine. Dabrowski's expression shifted, just slightly. You're saying someone set up a network to look like yours. I'm saying I didn't set it up, and it's not showing on my router's admin page either. I checked before you got here, Diane scoffed. Convenient, ma'am, Reyes said, not unkindly. Can we see your phone too? She hesitated, half a second, no more, but Marcus caught it. She unlocked her phone and handed it over, already talking through what they'd find before they found it. Reyes scrolled her Wi-Fi history in silence. Then he stopped scrolling. You've connected to this same network, he said, multiple times. Same name Mr. Whitfield just showed us. Diane blinked. That's my network. It's not, though, Marcus said quietly. That's the point. For the first time since she'd crossed the lawn, Diane looked less certain than furious. Her thumb hovered near her phone as if she wanted to take it back, to check it herself, to find some detail that would put her back on solid ground. She didn't get the chance. Dabrowski had already crouched slightly, studying the signal bars on Reyes' own radio link device. This is stronger than a home router should broadcast, he said. A lot stronger. How strong? Marcus asked. Strong enough to reach past both your houses. Dabrowski straightened, jaw tightening in the particular way of someone recalculating a situation they'd walked into with different assumptions. This isn't coming from either of your homes. The words landed heavier than anything said so far. Diane's mouth opened, then closed. Marcus said nothing, letting the silence do what a response couldn't. Reyes was still holding her phone. Ma'am, when's the last time you checked your bank app? Why would that? She stopped herself, thumb already moving. She opened it. 3 notifications waited, all from the past week, all dismissed and forgotten in the noise of ordinary days. New device signed into your account. New device signed into your account. Login attempt from an unrecognized location. Diane stared at the screen like it had betrayed her personally. I thought that was just a glitch. Everyone gets those. Not 3 times in a week from 3 different logins, Reyes said. Marcus watched her face change, the certainty she'd carried across the lawn draining out of it in real time. He didn't say I told you so. He didn't need to. He'd offered her a chance to check before the sirens ever arrived, and she'd chosen to dial instead. Dabrowski keyed his radio, requesting backup, and, after a pause, someone from cybercrime. If this signal's reaching 2 houses at this strength, he said to Reyes, low enough that Diane almost missed it, it's not stopping at 2. Down the street, past the Callahan's mailbox, a curtain shifted in a window Marcus hadn't noticed until now. The Petrosian house, quiet, always quiet, the kind of house nobody thought twice about. The curtain fell back into place a half-second later, like whoever had been watching had decided they weren't ready to be seen yet. Marcus caught it. Neither officer did. Mr. Whitfield, Dabrowski said, turning back to him. You said you checked your router's admin page before we arrived. Mind showing us exactly what you found? Happy to, Marcus said. It's easier to show you inside than explain it out here. Diane's arms had uncrossed somewhere in the last minute, though she probably hadn't noticed doing it. She looked at her phone again, at the notifications she'd swiped away without reading, and for the first time since she'd pointed her finger at Marcus's chest, she looked like someone bracing for a different kind of conversation than the one she'd expected to have this morning. This isn't just about you and me anymore, is it? She said. It wasn't really a question. Marcus didn't answer right away. He was still thinking about the curtain. No, he said finally. I don't think it is. By the time the cybercrime tech arrived, a woman named Priya Osei, laptop bag slung across one shoulder like she'd walked straight out of a different, more urgent version of the morning. 3 more neighbors had drifted onto their lawns, phones raised, pretending not to record. Marcus noticed them the way he noticed most things now, quietly, without comment. The Hendersons stood at their property line, whispering. Old Mr. Facchini leaned on his cane by the mailbox, unbothered by subtlety, watching the whole scene like it was the best thing to happen on the street in years. Nobody approached. Nobody asked questions. They simply watched, the way people do when trouble belongs to someone else. "Show me what you found," Jose said, crouching beside the porch steps with her laptop already open. Marcus walked her through the router logs while Dabrowski relayed signal readings over his radio. Jose's fingers moved fast, cross-referencing MAC addresses, timestamps, connection strength. She didn't speak for almost a full minute. When she did, her voice had the flat calm of someone delivering bad news for a living. "This isn't a mistake, and it isn't casual. Someone built an access point that mimics real home networks close enough that phones default to it automatically. Once you're on, everything you type, banking logins, passwords, routes through their device first." She looked up. "It's called an evil twin attack, and based on this signal strength, it's not just reaching your 2 houses." Diane's hand found the porch railing. "How many? I won't know until I check who else has phones broadcasting connection requests to it." Jose was already pulling up a scanning tool. "Give me 10 minutes. 10 minutes, Marcus thought, was a strange unit of time to measure a neighborhood's exposure in. Reyes had started knocking on doors 2 houses down, notepad in hand, the questions repeating in slightly different forms. "Have you noticed anything unusual with your Wi-Fi? Any strange bank alerts? Anyone new working on your router lately?" The answers came back in the same nervous rhythm. A woman at the Kowalski house said her husband's email had locked him out twice that week. A family 2 doors past that had a laptop that kept redirecting to strange login pages nobody in the house remembered visiting. Each answer landed like another stone dropped into water Diane was already standing in. "This is," she started, then stopped, watching Jose's screen fill with device names. More than she'd expected. More than made sense for a street this quiet. "This is everyone." "Not everyone," Marcus said. "But enough." Jose's scan finished. She turned the laptop without a word, and Dabrowski leaned in, counting under his breath as new entries populated the list. 1, 2, 5. He paused as another appeared. 7. 7 devices, Jose confirmed. 4 different houses. Diane's phone buzzed again. She flinched before even looking, the reflex of someone who'd learned in the last 20 minutes that a buzz no longer meant something ordinary. Her bank's fraud department. A hold placed on a transaction she hadn't made, a withdrawal request from an account she checked twice a week and had never once seen behave like this. They're trying to take money," she said, voice thinner now than the one she'd used on Marcus's porch an hour earlier. "Right now, while we're standing here." "And we should move faster than they're moving," Jose said, already typing. "I can triangulate the source if the signal's still broadcasting. It won't take long. This kind of range needs real hardware, not something you'd run off a phone. Somebody's got a physical device putting this out, and it has to be close." Marcus saw the certainty drain from Diane's expression, while Jose worked. Watched the fury she'd walked across the lawn with fully dissolve into something closer to fear. The specific fear of realizing the danger you assumed lived somewhere else had actually been standing beside you the whole time, waiting to be noticed. "How close?" Dabrowski asked. Jose's screen resolved the signal into a rough radius, a circle drawn across a satellite image of the cul-de-sac. The circle wasn't centered on Marcus's house. It wasn't centered on Diane's, either. It sat somewhere between the two, tightening as Jose refined the reading, the edge of it brushing close enough to a familiar shape that Marcus felt something settle cold in his chest before he let himself say anything. He thought of the curtain. The Petrosian house. Quiet. Always quiet. The kind of house nobody thought twice about because nobody had ever had a reason to. "Can you narrow it further?" he asked. "Give me the timestamps from your router again," Jose said. If I cross-reference against signal decay across 3 points instead of 2, I can pin it inside 50 feet. Marcus pulled up his phone. While she worked, he found himself scrolling back through his own connection logs, not for her sake, but for his own, some instinct telling him there was a detail he'd walked past too quickly. He found it near the bottom, a timestamp from 4 days earlier, a brief connection drop at almost the exact moment he remembered seeing a car he didn't recognize parked outside the Petrosian house, engine running. Nobody visible behind the wheel, for nearly 20 minutes before it pulled away. He hadn't thought anything of it at the time. People parked on this street all day. Got it, Osei said, and the circle on her screen collapsed into something small enough to matter, small enough to be one house, one address, one door that somebody was going to have to knock on. Diane leaned over to look, and whatever color had returned to her face after the fraud alert drained out of it entirely. That's not possible, she said. Marcus was already looking at the same address, already matching it against the house with the curtain, already understanding that whatever came next in this story was going to be far harder for Diane to accept than anything that had happened on his porch that morning. I think I know which house, he said quietly. Dabrowski followed his gaze down the street, past the mailbox, toward the quiet house nobody on the block had ever had a reason to watch. Show me, he said. Dabrowski knocked twice, waited, then knocked again, harder. No answer came from inside the Petrosian house, though the mailbox overflowed with 3 days of unclaimed circulars, and the garage door sat closed and silent at the end of the driveway. Petrosians usually spend summers with their daughter in Scottsdale, Diane said, arms wrapped around herself now, none of the certainty left in her voice from an hour earlier. Have for years. They leave in June. Then who's been in there? Reyes asked. Nobody answered, because nobody knew yet, and that not knowing had become the only thing anyone on the street could think about. Jose crouched near the side of the garage, laptop angled toward the structure, watching her signal reading climb the closer she got. This is it, she said. Whatever's putting out that broadcast is inside this building. Has to be. Nothing else out here could reach this strength. Dabrowski radioed for backup and a warrant, the kind of call that turns a quiet cul-de-sac into something closer to a crime scene. 2 more cruisers arrived within minutes, followed by a supervisor whose name Marcus didn't catch, and the small crowd on the lawns thickened, phones still raised, whispers louder now that there was finally something worth whispering about. Diane hadn't moved from the end of her own driveway. She kept looking at the garage, then at her phone, then back at the garage, like she was trying to force the two facts to make sense together, and failing every time. I've known the Petrosians 11 years, she said, mostly to herself. Nothing like this. Ever. Somebody's had access to this property, Marcus said. Recently, and often enough to run cabling, keep equipment powered, keep it hidden. That's not a stranger passing through. Diane's head turned slowly toward him. What are you saying? I'm saying whoever's doing this knows this street, knows this house, knows when it's empty. He hadn't meant the words to land as heavily as they did, but he watched them hit her anyway, watched her think through everyone she knew who fit that description and not like where the list was taking her. The warrant came through minutes later. Dabrowski forced the side door of the garage, while 2 other officers held position at the front, and Marcus stood at the edge of the driveway with Diane. Neither of them invited any closer, both of them straining to see anyway. The door swung open onto a garage that hadn't held a car in a long time. Along the back wall, mounted on a folding table, sat a tangle of hardware, a router modified with an external antenna wired through the wall, a small server humming quietly beside it, cables running to a laptop still open, still logged in, its screen glowing faintly in the dim room. Everybody stay back, Dabrowski called, though nobody had moved. Osei stepped past him anyway, professional interest overriding caution, and crouched beside the table without touching anything. This is a full setup, custom firmware, a directional antenna aimed straight down the block. She scanned the desk, the shelves behind it. Somebody built this to last, not a one-time thing. On a shelf above the table sat a spiral notebook, its cover worn soft from handling. Reyes lifted it carefully by the edges and opened to a page near the middle. Rows of handwriting, dates running back nearly 2 months. Addresses listed beside them, some crossed out, others circled twice. Diane's address was circled twice. So was Marcus's south. They've been tracking who's worth targeting, Reyes said quietly. Who logs into banking apps? Who doesn't change passwords? Weeks of notes. Diane made a small sound, not quite a word, and pressed a hand against the garage's doorframe. Marcus watched her struggle to keep her balance. Whoever's been running this had a key, Dabrowski said, half to himself, working through it out loud, or access some other way. The Petrosians wouldn't leave a stranger with run of their garage for 2 months. They wouldn't, Diane said quietly. Jose's flashlight swept the wall beside the door, catching a row of small hooks screwed into a board, a house-sitting system the kind neighbors kept for each other, each hook labeled in careful marker. Mail, mower shed, front door. One hook near the bottom sat empty, its label only half whistle where something had been scratched at with a fingernail, like someone had tried and failed to remove it entirely. Dabrowski leaned in close, angling his own light against it. What remained read, spare, given to T. Nobody spoke for a moment. T, Reyes repeated. That's it? No last name? Whoever wrote that label wasn't planning on anyone else reading it, Jose said, already photographing the notebook, the hooks, the empty space where a key should have been. Diane hadn't moved from the doorframe. She stared at the hook another long second, and then everything seemed to catch up with her at once. The notebook, the antenna, the weeks of quiet mornings she'd never once thought to question. Tyler, she said. Nobody spoke. My nephew. Her voice barely carried past the garage door. He's been staying with me since spring. Needed somewhere to land after school. She pressed her knuckles against her mouth for a moment before she could finish. I recommended him to the Petrosians myself. I told them he was responsible. I told them he was good with computers. Marcus said nothing. He didn't need to. Dabrowski's radio was already up near his mouth. Dispatch, we need a location on a possible suspect. Name's Tyler. He looked at Diane. Callahan, she said. Tyler Callahan. He's supposed to be at my house right now. He was there this morning, before any of this started. The crowd on the lawns had gone quiet, sensing that whatever they'd been recording had turned into something none of them had expected to witness. Marcus looked past the garage, down the street toward Diane's house, and understood that whatever came next wasn't going to happen somewhere far away. It was going to happen close enough that Diane would have to watch every second of it. Dabrowski was already moving. Let's go. Tyler was still in Diane's kitchen when they arrived, a mug of coffee cooling in front of him, laptop closed, headphones looped around his neck like he'd just stepped away from something and meant to get back to it. He looked up when the door opened, and whatever he saw in Diane's face told him faster than any words could have. Aunt Diane, don't. Her voice cracked on the single word, and she didn't try to steady it. Don't say my name, like that's going to fix anything. Dabrowski stepped in first, Reyes close behind, and Tyler's hand drifted toward the closed laptop before he seemed to think better of it and let it rest flat on the table instead. We need you to stand up and step away from that, Dabrowski said, slowly. I don't know what this is about. Tyler's voice came out thin, rehearsed in a way that made it worse rather than better. Marcus stayed in the doorway, watching. He hadn't been invited past it, and he didn't try to be. We found the equipment in the Petrosians' garage, Dabrowski said. The router, the antenna, the notebook with 2 months of addresses in your handwriting. He let that sit for a moment, before adding, your aunt found the hook where the spare key used to hang. Tyler's eyes went to Diane, searching her face for something. Permission to lie again, maybe, or forgiveness he hadn't earned yet. He found neither. It started small, he said finally, the words coming faster now that the alternative was silence. I was just going to look, see what people had. I wasn't going to actually. He stopped himself, hearing how it sounded even to his own ears. Actually what? Reyes asked. Take money? Because someone already tried pulling funds from Mrs. Callahan's account this morning. Tyler's jaw tightened. I was going to put it back. That's not how theft works, Dabrowski said, not unkindly, just factually, the way a person states something too obvious to argue with. Diane sat down hard in the chair across from him, the fight gone out of her posture entirely. 2 months, she said. You had a key to the Petrosians' garage for 2 months, and I complained about the mail I hadn't checked yet while you were... She couldn't finish it. I needed money, Tyler said. For school, for I don't know, everything. It felt like nobody would even notice. I noticed, Marcus said quietly from the doorway. It was the first thing he'd said since walking in, and every head in the room turned toward him. You just built it so it would point at someone else first. Tyler didn't answer that. There wasn't an answer that made it better. Dabrowski asked him to stand, and this time Tyler didn't argue. The cuffs went on with a small metallic sound that seemed to fill the whole kitchen, and Diane flinched at it like she'd been the one it was meant for. I'll need a full account of every device you accessed, Reyes said, already writing. Every household, every login. I'll cooperate, Tyler said, voice small now, all the earlier rehearsal gone out of it. Dabrowski led him out through the front door, past the small crowd still gathered on the lawns, past Diane's own house where this had all started that morning. Diane stayed in the kitchen a long moment after the door closed, staring at nothing, her hands wrapped around the coffee mug Tyler had left behind. I called the police on an innocent man, she said finally, not looking up. And the whole time the person actually doing something wrong was sitting at my kitchen table. Marcus didn't answer right away. He wasn't interested in making her sit with it longer than she already was, but he wasn't going to pretend the morning hadn't happened either. You made an assumption, he said. You decided who I was before you decided to ask. She nodded. Remember today, he said quietly. Next time, ask the question first. Outside, the crowd that had gathered through the morning had thinned to a handful of neighbors, quieter now than they'd been an hour earlier. Old Mr. Facchini caught Marcus's eye as he walked back toward his own house and lifted a hand, not quite a wave, more an acknowledgement, the kind exchanged between people who'd witnessed the same thing and understood, finally, what they'd seen. Jose was still packing up her equipment near the Petrosian's garage, the notebook now bagged as evidence, the router unplugged and silent for the first time in months. You should get a fraud alert on your accounts, just to be safe, he told Marcus as he passed. Standard after something like this. Already on it, he said. By evening, 4 households on the cul-de-sac had filed reports. The Petrosians would return from Scottsdale to a garage stripped of a stranger's hardware, and a neighbor they'd trusted now facing charges that would follow him well past whatever he owed in restitution. Diane's bank reversed the fraudulent hole within the week, though the trust she'd have to rebuild, with her nephew, with herself, would take considerably longer. Marcus went back to his own porch that evening, phone in hand, and checked his network one more time. Just his own signal now, steady and familiar, nothing broadcasting where it shouldn't. He hadn't asked for any of what the morning had cost him. He hadn't gotten an apology that made it worth it either, but he'd stayed exactly who he was through all of it, and somewhere in that, he supposed, was the only kind of vindication that had ever really mattered. Assumptions cost more than the people making them ever expect to pay. The truth is rarely as far away as we assume. Sometimes it's standing right in front of us, calm and patient, waiting to be seen. If this story moved you, don't scroll past it, like it, share it, and subscribe for more stories like this one. You never know who needs to hear it today.